Welcome back to We Want Picks. I'm Artem MMA. In this video, I'm going to be talking about KSW 84 degrees versus Bajor and giving my predictions for every single fight on the card. It should be a pretty good event. It takes place just a few hours before the UFC begins, and it will be headlined by the heavyweight champion Phil Defries defending against Simon Bajor. And in the co-main event, the former bantamweight champion Seastian Przybysz will be welcoming a new KSW newcomer, Islam Djabrailov, to the promotion. It should be a pretty good event, and as I said, it does just start a few hours before the UFC. But before we do get into the predictions, you can access all of the We Want Picks premium content by signing up to the We Want Picks website, wewantpicks.com/premium, and by watching this video, you can actually also get a 3-day free trial, cancel at any time by using my code ARTEM, which is going to be just on the left-hand side of the video. And now with all of that being said, let's get into the picks. And starting off the card isn't really the strongest fight on the world, but it should be a very fun one. Patryk Chrobak is taking on Melchert, and if you guys can believe it, I'm actually going to be picking Patryk Chrobak in this matchup by round 1 knockout. Now, I believe that's probably his only chance of winning this fight because Melchert is going to be trying to take him down. One thing I noticed about Chrobak is this guy is powerful, this guy is scrappy, and this guy is massive for 135 pounds. He doesn't have any good wins on his record whatsoever, but he did drop Kakarov in the very first round of that matchup, and then he gassed out and got finished himself. And Kakarov has gone on to have a great career himself. He's actually signed to the PFL right now. And then he did have a pretty bad performance against Paulo Portillo, but that was a war. He did get the worst end of the war, but he did go to war against Powell, and he was like a plus 500 underdog in that matchup. And then his last fight was a 139-pound catchweight bout. I don't know whose request that was. Maybe it was on the Chrobak side just because he's so big for the weight class. But Melchert, I was watching tape on this guy. His striking is not very good. He throws spinning kicks when he really shouldn't and doesn't need to, and he's hittable. And one thing I can tell you about Chrobak is maybe he doesn't have the best cardio in the world, but this guy is here to scrap. He throws powerful hooks, he throws powerful overhands. He's probably going to want to keep it on the feet, whereas Melchert's probably going to be going for takedowns. But I believe that Chrobak can defend the takedowns of Melchert. Chrobak was able to keep the fight on the feet for the most part against Kakarov, who is a better fighter in my opinion than Melchert. I'm just not impressed by Melchert striking whatsoever, and I'm going to be picking the underdog in Chrobak to start off the card. He's minus 105. Do I recommend that you bet on this fight? Absolutely not. Just to watch it and enjoy. Maybe I'm wrong on this take, but I really do feel like Chrobak should be able to get it done. He's scrappy, and I just don't like the striking of Melchert whatsoever. So give me Patryk Chrobak to win this matchup here by first round KO. Nobody else is really picking him, but I can see him getting it done. The second fight of the night is going to be between Borys Dzikowski and Damian Mieczkowski, and it's going to be a very fun fight. Borys Dzikowski is a guy that just puts people out cold. It's absolutely insane. And Damian Mieczkowski is a guy that I know absolutely nothing about, but I will talk about him later because I'll get through to Borys. Borys, I couldn't watch his most recent fight. I couldn't find a way for me to watch it in New Zealand, so unfortunately I missed out on that. But I did manage to watch him put two people out cold in the very first round against Lucas Nowak. It came with a lot of resistance. The referee should have stopped the fight when Lucas Nowak knocked out Borys. Borys was pretty much out. He was knocked down, he was covering up like this as you do, and then just out of nowhere he rises from the ashes out of nowhere, stands up and puts Lucas Nowak out cold. It was actually one of the craziest comebacks I've genuinely ever seen. And then against Arkadiusz Mruk, he just knocks him out in 40 seconds with a head kick, so not really much to talk about there. It was a great KO. Once again, I couldn't see the laying in fight, which is a shame, but for Damian, this is his second fight in 11 years. I don't really know what happened to Damian and why he took so much time off, but it does look like he did have some military service thrown in there. But I can tell you not a lot about his debut. He gets taken down immediately into the first round, controlled for the entirety of the first round. The second round starts up. Damian defends the takedown, gets on top, and rains ground and pound and finishes the fight with ground and pound in the second round. So I don't know how good Damian is at striking, but one thing I do know about Borys is he is a very good kickboxer. He puts people out Sparko. He puts people out Sparko in the first round, so I'm going to go with Borys by KO, and he is minus 200, but this is just once again a fight you shouldn't bet. I mean, you can only watch one fight from Damian to start with, and it is what I just said it was. He gets taken down and controlled for the first round and then comes back in the second round. And then Borys, he's just knocking people out in the first round and in the first minute in some cases. So there's not really a lot to go off. I'm going to go with Borys. I'm going to go Borys by KO. So is everybody else. But now we can get on to fights between more experienced fighters. The next fight of the night is going to be Darko Stosic taking on Stefan Vojcak. And this really could be a very interesting fight, or it could be quite boring. Now, I am going to be going with Darko Stosic, who is a pretty big favorite in this matchup. He is is minus 275, whereas Vojcak is plus 200. But Stefan Vojcak's actually had a very dominant career so far, and that's kind of a little bit of a problem. He has never ever fought somebody that's been able to defend his takedowns. Vojcak does the same thing every single fight. He goes out there and he takes his opponent down ASAP and then just kind of dominates them, except for he couldn't do that against Sofian Bukacu. But he did this against Evgeny Golub. He took him down immediately, and Golub just had absolutely nothing after he got taken down. It was a very, very odd fight to watch. But after that, every single fight that he's had, he just takes down his opponents as soon as he can, either submits them or ground and pounds them out. Half of his opponents were over the age of 43, so kind of do what you will with that. But in his toughest test against Sofian Bukacu, Bukacu wasn't able to defend the takedowns at all, but Vojcak just took him down and wasn't able to dominate like he could, and Vojcak really slowed down after the first round. Now, Darko Stosic is a very interesting case because he actually had a UFC run a while ago where he went on a 3-fight losing streak against fighters which, in hindsight, are actually quite good. And Devin Clark, Kennedy Nzechukwu, and Jamal Hill, who is now the champion. And Jamal Hill, he took down Jamal Hill 6 times, but still lost that fight because he was outstruck so much on the feet. Against Nzechukwu, he took him down 4 times, but once again lost because he was outstruck on the feet. But now that he's moved up to heavyweight to start with, he is massive. Like, he is built proper for heavyweight now. He's actually become a striker. He seems to hate this guy called Mikhail Kaita because he took years off his life, and not just 1 fight, but 2 fights. Knocked him out both times, brutally both times. Had a close fight against Mikhail Andrzejczyk, which I thought Andrzejczyk probably should have won, but that's for another day. And then against Shamil Gaziev, he actually knocked him down with a left hook, but then got finished himself. What I am going to pick is Stosic, and why I'm picking Stosic is because I do believe he's going to be the one to defend the takedowns against Stefan Vojcak. Vojcak, as I said, he's never fought somebody that can defend his takedowns, ever. But I think that Darko Stosic, he is so big for this weight class. I mean, he does only weigh in at about 240 pounds, but you look at the size of this man and how wide he is and how big his arms are, and also that wrestling base that he showed in the UFC but hasn't really shown in KSW. I think Darko Stosic defends the takedowns and just knocks Stefan Vojcak out on the feet. Vojcak seemed to be quite athletic, surprisingly athletic as well, considering his build. I saw him throwing a lot of kicks, which isn't really something you see a lot of heavyweights do. Like, Darko Stosic doesn't throw kicks, he just throws overhands and lefts. But I think he's so powerful, and I think he's so big for the weight class as Stosic. I think he does knock out Stefan Vojcak. I think he can defend the takedowns against Vojcak and knock him out on the feet. So I'm going to go Darko Stosic by KO in this matchup, and so is the majority of the people as well. The next fight of the night is going to be Henry Fadipe taking on Krystian Cezariusz, and this is going to be a pretty fun fight. Henry Fadipe, for the most part, is a Muay Thai striker. He's very, very technical, throws a lot of kicks, switches stances a lot. And Krystian Cezariusz, he's a brawler on the feet that can wrestle as well. That's kind of how I would sort of describe his career, I guess, or his fighting style. But unfortunately, the highlights of Krystian's career have been on other people's highlight reels. Like, he was put out by Adrian Bartoszynski, who's now the champion and an absolute beast at fighting, but he also got knocked out by Roberto Soldic when he was fighting for the title way back when in 2019. Henry Fadipe, his record is 13-10, but it's actually quite deceiving because a lot of his losses come way back in 2012 to 2013, way back in the early of his career. But since then, he's gone on a really good run with only a couple of losses to pretty good opponents. Now, we got KO'd by Ion Pascu when he was kind of going for like a submission off his back. Pascu put him out cold with a right hand. It was crazy. And then he recently did lose to Marcin Krokwiak, where he just wasn't really able to get anything going. He did beat Albert Odzminski, and this was an interesting fight. It was fun. Albert was trying to get takedowns. Fadipe was trying to keep it on the feet. But then Albert gets a takedown very early on into the second fight. And Henry's kind of got like a guillotine sort of wrapped in. And then he quickly turns it into a Peruvian necktie. And it was such an impressive submission. I was really, really impressed with the way that he was able to lock that up. And it was a really good way to introduce yourself to the KSW. But then he did lose his next fight. And I think he might lose this one as well. The problem is, this is a very hard fight to call, and there are a reason why the odds are actually evens, because if you do look at the odds, I'm trying to find them now, Henry Fadipe is plus 115, and Cezariusz is minus 150, so they're not quite evens, but they're quite close. I'm going to go Krystian Cezariusz. He is nowhere near as technical as Fadipe is on the feet, but I believe he can wrestle in this matchup here. I don't think he should mess around on the feet because Fadipe throws a lot of front kicks, he throws a lot of jabs, he throws a lot of long shots because he is 6'2" with a 77-inch reach, whereas Chrobak is 5'11" with a 69-inch reach. He's going to be a lot shorter and just not as long as Fadipe, who's going to try and pick him apart from range. I think Krystian is going to bomb away on the feet like he does. He's a bit of a brawler. He loves to throw hooks. He can get him caught, which is why he has been on the highlight reel of other people recently. But I do believe that Chrobak is going to go in, bomb away, and then get takedowns against Fadipe, whose takedown defense it's pretty good. But once you can really get in on him, because he is quite thin for the weight class, you can't get the takedowns, and I do believe that Krystian can. So I'm going to go with Krystian to win by decision. Now, it's interesting to know that Fadipe is actually only ever won by decision once, and most of his losses do come by KO, but I just don't really see Krystian. He had a run where he was KOing everybody in the first rounds, but for the most part, most of his wins are by decision, and I do think he gets another decision win in this matchup here. So give me Krystian to win by decision. It looks like most of the public has that as well. Pascal Hitzen will be taking on Damian Stasiak, and I was quite surprised to see Damian Stasiak as minus 450 favorite before I did the tape study, because if you do look at Damian Stasiak, man, he's a big favorite in this matchup. Minus 450 on some sports books, minus 385 on the other. You get about plus 300 on Pascal Hitzen, and then I started watching the fights, and I thought Damian Stasiak beat Roderick Ruchala, who's now going to be fighting for the title against Saladin Parnasse. And after watching that fight, I would be very, very surprised if Saladin Parnasse lost that fight. But with all that being said, Damian Stasiak actually had a UFC run. It was a while ago. It wasn't too successful. There was a couple of decisions thrown in there against Pedro Munoz and Pingyuan Liu, who I don't know if is still on the roster, but we haven't seen this guy fight in a long time. But with all that being said, he then moved over to KSW, fought at 135 pounds for a bit, and then moved up to 145 pounds and has looked quite good in their matchup. He was significantly smaller than Roderick Ruchala when he fought against him, but I thought he had a good performance. He submitted Andrei Lichanev with a triangle choke, and then he submitted Patrick Soden with an arm triangle choke, put him out cold when he was on top, and submitted him there. But then he's lost a couple of fights to just maybe better opponents, even though I thought he beat Ruchala, but I've said that about 3 times this breakdown. Pascal Hitzen seems to have absolutely nothing but BJJ. So I was watching this guy's fights, and he's just getting bullied on the feet. Like, Adam Soldayev just beat him up on the feet. It was obvious that Pascal was nowhere near as good as him at strike, and then Patrick Kazmaziak bullied him on the feet as well. He hurt him to the body early on and just landed, honestly, I want to say about 8 knees to the face in the clinch after hurting him to the body. It was absolutely ridiculous how much Patrick just big brothered him in that matchup. He did submit Patrick Likas, but he did struggle to get takedowns in that matchup, and that win hasn't aged very well. So you can tell I don't really have the most positive things to say about Pascal Hitzen, but he does have a chance to get a submission, but that's the only chance I give him. I think Damian Stasiak is the better striker, actually was able to put down Robert Ruchala on the feet. He knocked him down, or knocked him off balance, I guess you could say. Stasiak's also got better wrestling, in my opinion. Stasiak's also got good grappling. I think this is a good stylistic matchup for Patrick Hitzen to win as a plus 300 underdog, but Damian Stasiak, I think, has him covered pretty much everywhere. Maybe in pure BJJ, it could get interesting if they are kind of grappling against each other, but I like Stasiak in the matchup. I do think that Damian Stasiak is able to win this matchup. I mean, the fans seem to have Hitzen, but Stasiak's a minus 450 favorite, so maybe that tells you that you shouldn't be putting money on a minus 450 favorite like that, but I am going to be going with Damian Stasiak in this matchup. The next fight is going to be Bruno Santos taking on Gustavo Oliveira, and it's very interesting seeing 2 non-European fighters fighting for KSW, because normally there's always at least 1 European fighter involved in their fights, but I'm going to be going with Bruno Santos in this matchup. I couldn't find much on Gustavo Oliveira, but I did manage to find fights that aren't even on his record, which was very strange. But Gustavo Oliveira, he seems to be a decent grappler. He was knocking people out for the most part of his career to start with, but then he stopped knocking people out after about 2018 when he started to make, I guess, a step up in competition, where he hasn't really been fighting the best guys in the world though. But I think he does lose to Bruno Santos. Bruno Santos' fighting style really surprised me, because I saw that he was a grappler and I thought he was going to be like maybe one of your more typical Brazilian grapplers, like this is a bad example, but like a Charles Oliveira sort of type, aggressive on the feet, very aggressive on the ground. but he's not. He takes people down and he controls them on top, but his wrestling isn't super strong, which is why he's been out-wrestled in a lot of his fights in the KSW promotion. But he actually ended up fighting for the title at one point. He fought Seastian Przybysz at one point in 2021, but he did lose that fight by submission. And in that fight, there was a surprisingly high amount of striking, but Przybysz was getting the best of Oliveira in that matchup, or sorry, of Santos in that matchup. But for Oliveira, as I said, I couldn't really find a lot on this guy. I don't really know what he's all about. I saw him win by submission on a fight that's not even on his record. I haven't really seen any of his KO wins because I couldn't find them. Like, this guy is just a guy that he's a ghost. He's a ghost. So I'm going to go Bruno Santos just because I know more about him. It's not a fight that I'll bet on whatsoever just because I couldn't find a lot on his opponent. But Bruno Santos is minus 275 in this matchup, and his opponent Gustavo Oliveira is plus 210. The majority of people are picking Santos. I'm going to go with Santos to win by decision as well. Just that his fight style really is, he just takes people down and does control people on top for the majority of his fights. So I'm going to pick him to do that again against Gustavo Oliveira in this matchup. This next fight is going to be very fun. It's Nemanja Nikolic taking on Bartosz Lesko, and I'm going to be picking the big underdog in Nemanja Nikolic in this matchup. He's sitting at about plus 200, whereas Bartosz Lesko is about minus 250. But the reason why I'm going to be picking Nemanja Nikolic is I was actually just a lot more impressed by him than I was of Lesko when I was watching them fight. I watched most of Lesko's most recent fights, the fights that I could find. I watched him get choked out by Tom Borys in the first round. I watched him beat this guy called Damian Wojcak. I'm sorry, I've definitely said his name wrong. And then I watched him lose by KO against Hussein Kushkov, where Hussein Kushkov couldn't take him down, so Lesko did show really good takedown defense, but Lesko wasn't able to get anything going either, not even on the feet, where all Kushkov really was throwing was just overhands on the feet and nothing else. You know, Lesko was trying to throw spinning back kicks and just stuff that, you know, I was thinking, man, you're not as technical as a striker to be throwing kicks like this. And Kushkov just kind of capitalized on that, knocked him out in the second round. Now, Nemanja Nikolic, this guy's tape was so hard to find, man. And the problem is there's two fighters called Nemanja Nikolic, so that made things even more difficult to know. So I kind of just based every tape that I was watching based on this tattoo, because the other Nemanja Nikolic doesn't have tattoos. It was difficult. It really was. But one thing I was so surprised about with Nemanja Nikolic is how good his grappling is. Now, the problem is he's looking really, really good against really, really low levels of competition. But, you know, it's not a good thing because he's never tested himself against someone that is about his level. But the good thing is that he's just dominating people that he's meant to dominate. Like, he submitted this guy called Nikolic in 30 seconds. It was incredibly how fast and slick he was able to set up the armbar. He pulled guillotine against Roland Campbell, which, you know, you don't really like to see, but it worked out for him. On the feet, he knocks people out as well. He's very aggressive out the gate. He is somewhat hittable, but he's surprisingly patient as well. Like, if his opponent is trying to approach him and throw a lot of volume like Nikolic did, he will be patient. He will kind of try and counter-strike in that sense. However, if he's fighting someone that he knows isn't as good as him at striking, he'll just go out there and try and knock them out. But one thing I was surprised with was how slick his grappling is. He does have really, really slick grappling. Bartosz Lesko, as I said, I just wasn't as impressed by him as I was when I watched Nemanja Nikolic. So I'm actually going to be picking Nemanja Nikolic to win by submission in this matchup. Now, Lesko does have a lot of wins by submission himself, but he couldn't really get a lot of his grappling going or his wrestling going in a lot of the fights that I was watching from him. So I'm going to go with Nikolic. I think it could be an interesting fight. I'm worried if the fight gets extended, if the fight leaves the first round, then it's probably going to be a little bit scary for Nemanja, but because he doesn't leave the first round very often whatsoever. But I'm going to go with Nikolic to win by submission in this matchup in the first round. I think maybe he knocks him down and then gets a submission. So it's a little bit of a risky pick from me, because I don't like picking people that haven't fought anybody good whatsoever. But I'm going to go with Nikolic to win by finish in this matchup. It's a sketchy fight, but I'm going to go with the undefeated fighter who is plus 200. I feel like a lot of people in Tapology probably just saw the record and picked based off that, but I do think that Nikolic manages to find the finish in this matchup. The next fight should be a striker versus grappler matchup. It's going to be Cezariusz Kesik taking on Damian Janikowski, and Cezariusz is going to be the striker and Damian is going to be the grappler, but I would say he's probably more of a wrestler because in 2012 at the London Olympics he managed to get the silver medal. He is a very good wrestler. He does try to get his opponents down. He is a little bit shorter than most of his opponents at 185 pounds, but he's a powerful guy, he throws a bit of leg kicks, and he has managed to get a bit of a well-rounded game. But I am going to be picking the striker in this matchup in Cezariusz Kesik. The problem with Cezariusz Kesik, though, which does scare me a little bit, is I have seen him taken down numerous times by different opponents. You know, he got taken down by he didn't get taken down by Thomas Rozmanowski, he just got carried by him. Paweł Polak was able to get him down. Marcin Krakowiak was able to get him down. Even while Marcin Krakowiak was rocked, he was able to take down Kesik. Kesik rocked him all over the place in the first, second, and then finished him off in the third round. But Kesik, for the most part, is a very powerful striker. 10 wins by KO, hasn't had the best KSW run, and in fact, he was actually the guy that got submitted by Abus Magomedov before Abus Magomedov got signed to the UFC. Now, Cezariusz Kesik, I'm going to go with him. He's a guy that is pretty technical. He doesn't throw too many high kicks, which is probably going to be best when he's fighting Damian Janikowski. Most of his kicks are to the legs, sometimes to the body, and he's a good boxer. That's kind of how he gets most of his job done. He boxes a lot. Damian Janikowski, for the most part, he throws leg kicks and he goes for takedowns and he likes to clinch. He really likes the clinch, which is probably that Greco-Roman wrestling style that he does have. He's had a pretty up and down career in MMA, where he started off pretty strong, taking on some very good opponents starting off. You know, he was only 1-0 when he fought a guy that was 32-16, which is crazy when you really think about it. But he obviously did have that wrestling background that he did have. But if you do go through it, he's fought some good guys and beaten some good guys, but he's also lost to some pretty good guys as well. So he's had a very up and down career, but it's always been against good levels of competition. So the 8-5 record isn't like just the average 8-5 record, I guess you could say. Now the odds do favor Cezariusz Kesik, who is my pick. If you do look at the odds, he's -200, and Damian Janikowski is +150. If you're picking Damian Janikowski to start with, you've got to trust him to go for takedowns, because he doesn't always go for takedowns in his fights. He doesn't mind striking either. And then you've also got to trust the fact that Kesik won't be able to take him down. But I think Kesik is able to touch him and hurt him before Janikowski even gets the opportunity. In most of his fights, Kesik hurts his opponents very early on into the fight, and then just goes crazy trying to finish them off. It has been a detriment to him in the past. He almost gassed out trying to finish Marcin Krakowiak in the first round, but he managed to hurt him again in the second and then finish him off in the third. So I'm going to go with Cezariusz Kesik in this matchup. I think he wins by KO, and I think he knocks out Damian Janikowski in this matchup. So give me Cezariusz Kesik to win by knockout in the first or the second round. And now the co-main event is going to be a very interesting one. It's Islam Djabrailov taking on Seastian Przybysz, and it's a weird fight because Seastian Przybysz has fought significantly better competition than Islam Djabrailov, and better competition than what Islam Djabrailov is, because Seastian Przybysz actually had a pretty long title run. He won the belt in 2021 and then defended the belt twice, lost it to Jacob Wiklak in a rematch, and then has been just fighting guys that haven't been so great yet. So I'm thinking that maybe KSW is just trying to build up his record a little bit, so maybe he can take on Jacob Wiklak again. But I am going to be picking Seastian Przybysz, and I'm very confident that Seastian Przybysz wins this matchup. He is -500, and Djabrailov is +325. So that kind of tells you, I guess, what you really need to know. But at the end of the day, the level of the competition is way different, man. And also another thing that I've noticed is Seastian Przybysz is so much faster than Djabrailov. He's just really quick. He's also more well-rounded. You know, he can get it done with the grappling. He can get it done on the feet as well. Most of his KOs don't necessarily come on the feet. They do kind of come with ground and pounds. But I think he actually does win this fight by KO on the feet, because I think he's that much better of a striker against Islam Djabrailov, who's not that technical at striking. He wants to wrestle and he wants to grapple. But Seastian Przybysz is just no joke himself. So I think that we're going to see Seastian Przybysz just defend the takedowns against Islam Djabrailov, maybe even end up on top himself and just beat him up, honestly, because I just am not incredibly impressed by Islam, you know, because he took a 6-8 opponent to decision. He beat a guy that's 12-2, 4-2. Like, this is a guy that has been fighting low levels of competition. Now he's going to be taking on the former KSW champion, who's been in there just numbers on a page with a 16-4 opponent, 10-2, 25-8, 10-2 opponent, 20-6 opponent, and beaten them. So it's just the levels of competition, just numbers on a paper are completely different. When you watch them, I think Seastian Przybysz is just a level above Islam Djabrailov. He's faster, he's more well-rounded as well, in my opinion. He's significantly better on the feet. And that's why I'm actually going to pick Przybysz to win by KO on the feet, and it seems like a lot of people agree with me as well in this matchup. I think Przybysz is a very confident pick, minus 500. You could probably add him to something else in the UFC to get pretty good odds out of it. So I'm going to go Seastian Przybysz to win by KO on the feet over Islam Djabrailov. And now the main event is going to be Phil de Vries taking on Simon Bajor, and I'm going to be picking Phil de Vries to win by finish. Now, Phil de Vries has been on an absolute tear since he got into KSW. He won the vacant title against Mikkel Andrusek in 2018, and has just defended that bout over and over and over and over again. And he's defended the bout so many times, KSW has ran out of heavyweight prospects to throw at him. This is a big problem just in MMA in general. There's not enough heavyweight prospects anywhere. The UFC's running into this problem. KSW's running into this problem. And in fact, they're running into the problem so bad, they are signing fighters to fight Phil de Vries for the title. They signed Todd Duffy to do a rematch 11 years in the making. Todd Duffy hadn't fought for 4 years, and they did the rematch. And, you know, Phil de Vries won that fight in the first round. It was an odd fight to make in general, but I guess it was kind of a cool storyline. Todd Duffy defeated Phil de Vries in 2012, and now they've signed Simon Bajor, who hasn't fought for KSW in a very long time, and he hasn't fought since last year as well, and that was for the PFL. So it's getting to the point now where KSW is signing fighters to fight against Phil de Vries for the title. So I guess you could say that they're really hoping Stefan Vojcak wins that fight so they can give him Phil de Vries. But Phil de Vries is just running through these KSW guys, man. It's getting to the point where they've just got absolutely nobody to give him. So they've signed Simon Bajor, but I looked into Simon Bajor, and he can't beat Phil de Vries. I mean, he can. It's MMA. Anything can happen. So I probably shouldn't have said that, but I don't think he beats Phil de Vries. I think Phil de Vries gets by Simon Bajor. Simon Bajor took Ronnie Marks to a decision recently, which just, you know, at this point in Ronnie Marks' career isn't really that impressive. I know a lot of people picked Marks to win that fight, but dude, Ronnie Marks fought in 185 pounds, and I believe he's fought as low as 170 pounds, and he fought against Reggie Pena, which was a short notice fight, at 205 pounds recently. So Ronnie Marks is all over the place in his career at the moment, and Simon Bajor took him to a decision for the PFL in 2022, and he hasn't fought since, and now they've signed him to fight Phil de Vries. So I guess just being Polish and having a pretty decent record is enough to get a title shot in KSW these days. So I'm going to go with Phil de Vries. Phil de Vries is very well-rounded. He started off with a lot of submissions, but now that he's a heavyweight, he seems to be, now that he's in KSW, he seems to be getting the job done with the hands on the feet. He hurt Todd Duffy early and beats him early, but Todd Duffy, to be fair, was a bit of a shell of himself. If you look at his record, he hadn't fought for 4 years before that matchup, and then before that, he hadn't fought for another 4 years. That was his second fight in 8 years. And he hadn't won since he beat Anthony Hamilton way back when in 2014. And Anthony Hamilton is still fighting as well, by the way, if you wanted to know. But dude, like, I don't know what they could do. Like, at this point, do they just re-sign Lewis Henrique and do a rematch with Lewis Henrique? Like, I don't know what KSW is going to do with Phil de Vries after this, but I do genuinely believe that Phil de Vries beats Simon Bajor. If Simon Bajor wins, they'll do a rematch, which could kind of have a cool storyline, but you've got to go with Phil de Vries in the matchup. He's a massive favorite. He's about minus 500. Phil de Vries gets it done on the feet. He gets it done on the ground. Simon Bajor kind of does a bit of everything, but taking Ronnie Marks to a decision is just a little bit concerning to me. He's also quite well-rounded, as you can see, but I'm going to go Phil de Vries by a finish within the first 3 rounds of the fight. I think he manages to find something, and I think he wins this matchup, defends his title again, so give me Phil de Vries to win by finish, and as I said, he is a massive favorite. He's minus 500, Simon Bajor is plus 325, so you could just parlay Przybysz, de Vries, and then maybe, like, just another favorite that you really like on the UFC card, maybe like Victoria Dudikova or Azat Maksam with de Vries and Przybysz, because I think they're both very confident picks, but it's heavyweight MMA. Anything can happen in heavyweight MMA, but I do believe Phil de Vries wins this matchup.